I better introduce myself before it all gets confusing. My name is Dimitri. I'm one of the evangelists working for JetBrains, generally traveling around and talking about all sorts of products that we do. And I assume that you have heard about JetBrains and our products. If not, this is a good opportunity to get a taste. And this set of talks, we're actually going to have 3, or maybe at least 3, because I just realized that we've got like 4 hours of time, so there's lots of stuff that we can cover. There's going to be a talk on what's new in ReSharper 8.1. Then I'm going to do like a bit of a trolling talk on Visual Studio, because one thing that happens almost every release of Visual Studio is people come around and they say, well, you know, by the way, Visual Studio now has everything that you have, therefore, guys, you know, stop working. It's time to go home. Visual Studio is taking over, you know, great. So that was loud. I'm going to basically just give a few examples of things that ReSharper, how ReSharper behaves compared to how Visual Studio behaves. And then talk number 3 is going to be about the other tools, because I mean, most people know about ReSharper. Not many people know about our coverage and profiling and decompilation tools. So I will give a demo of those as well. And then maybe if we have some time at the end, then we can sort of go off on a tangent and maybe talk about some of the more speculative stuff, like, I don't know, C++ support in ReSharper or something to that effect. We've got, as you can imagine, we've got lots of R&D that's being cooked at any particular time, and some of it is quite interesting. And also, what's happening right now with the .NET ecosystem is interesting by itself, because obviously Microsoft is finally saying that, you know, they're all using Roslyn internally, and that's a game changer for them, obviously, and for .NET developers, but also for us, because it might feel like, you know, we're doing roughly the same thing. But anyways, we're going to start with what's new in ReSharper 8.1. Typically, what we do, though, is we have these kinds of talks for the major releases. So, for example, ReSharper 8 comes out, and we travel around, we do lots of talks, because obviously a major upgrade is where we need your money, whereas for 8.1, it's a free upgrade. So you might be wondering, well, you know, why are you trying to persuade us when, you know, if we're using ReSharper 8, we can just upgrade? But there are a few things that I just want to gloss over and generally, you know, give a few for what have we been working on, because typically at the moment the release cycle is something like, well, close to once a year. So so it would be like ReSharper 7, then the year passes, ReSharper 8, and so on. And throughout this time, we also managed to get smaller, shall we say, releases in there. Typically, a really minor release like an 8.1 would be some bug fixes, but an 8.1 in this case is some features that we're going to look at. So first and most obvious constraint on our development is the fact that when a new version of Visual Studio comes out, we have to support it as well. There is no avoiding it, and in the past we did have situations where we haven't caught up. At the moment, we're very much in tune. So Visual Studio 2013 has come out recently, and I'll be showing some of the integration features that we have for that. Then there is Typescript. Obviously, when a new language comes out from Microsoft, we typically try to support it. And I say typically because there are languages like F# that are yet to be supported, and that's something that we can talk about in the time at the end if we have any. Then I'm going to show JavaScript Ssr. I'll talk about XAML. I'll talk about project dependencies and a couple of other things. Just so you're warned, for the most of this session, I'm actually going to be sitting down right here because I'll need the machine. So if you can't see me very well, don't be alarmed. I'm actually here. So we're going to start with Visual Studio 2013 integration. I hope that you can see the screen okay. I actually tried the light layout first, but it faded out somewhat. So Visual Studio 2013 has, well, actually we have supported Visual Studio 2013 in version 8. But in version 8.1, we added specific support for 2 features that are, how should I put it? They're are new features of Visual Studio 2013 that we could choose to either plug into or not. And the first of these is peak definition. So this is something that you know, you can press Alt F12 on a symbol, and instead of opening up a separate editor, you essentially get this kind of inset window, shall we say. And inside this window, you can just see a preview. So, for example, here for the sign function, let me open this up again. For the sign function, it kind of shows you the contents, and you can sort of peek at what's going on there. Now, the reason why I'm talking about it is because we actually support it in terms of ReSharper. So once you're inside this peak definition window, you can, for example, bring up in ReSharper's navigation menu. So even though you're inside this kind of like a temporary tab inside a normal tab, you can still like, I don't know, find usages, for example, and stuff like that. I probably did a find usages on something that's really really popular. It's worth mentioning here actually that one of the sort of key differences in terms of treating decompiled code, because that's what's happening here. We actually have this this sign function, which is you know, it's not something we've got a source code for, but ReSharper, it's got lots of ways of figuring out where stuff is, in the sense that, you know, it doesn't just show you metadata, it tries to find stuff. So here, for example, I went and searched for usages of, I think it was method impl attribute, and as you can see, instead of getting a separate pop-up or a separate tool window, I get the actual listing inside the peak definition. I can sort of navigate here. I shouldn't have double pressed that, but never mind. So essentially, we kind of integrate into this idea of peak def, and that's something that we also have as a navigation feature. Let me try. I think it's Control-Alt-Click that we have this on. So instead of Alt F12, I think I can do Control-Alt and just click on sign, and hopefully that will do exactly the same thing, albeit somewhat slower. Oh no, there's a different behavior here. It goes off to, yeah, that's I guess yeah, this doesn't do peak definition. This is another pair of features that we've added. So Control-Alt-Click goes to the definition of a symbol, even if obviously if that symbol is not available. That's what happens here. Is kind of it's basically getting the sources. But of course, with sign, it's a bit of a problem, because I think that mathematical functions in .NET, they're actually defined in unmanaged code. So whatever the case, we're not getting a decompiled version. Let's actually find something that that maybe does. I don't know. Let's do a synthetic one. There we go. So Alt, Control, click. Should be more interesting, because at least for this one we should get a listing. This dialog, by the way, the one with the yes and no, that shouldn't pop up every time. I don't know why it says it. Yeah, so here for example, we managed to acquire the source code and got it from the symbol servers and actually present. So the peak definition is one of the two features new in Visual Studio. The other one is the enhanced scroll bar. You can see it here on the right. It's kind of massive. And what we've done is essentially, well, we realized that some people would, I mean, what happened in 2013 is Visual Studio started adding its own markers to the scroll bar. So for example, as I move the cursor over, you can see there is a white horizontal line here that keeps kind of moving around as an indicator. So we, as an option, we added our own markers to this marker bar as well. So instead of having a separate vertical column here, what we've done is, you can see here the orange and the green bars. Essentially, you can click them and navigate to an issue, and you also get tooltip pop-ups as well. But I mean, opinions have differed on whether this is actually good or not, because the idea of clicking on a scroll bar is not to everyone's taste. So what we've done is we've made it kind of configurable. Let me see if I can dig up the exact location where that's it's really the case. This might actually take some time because trying to remember where on earth this this marker bar thing is. It's probably not at the 1 second. Inspections. No. Search and navigation. Header appearance. There we go. All right. So the options here are that you can disable the marker bar together. Obviously not the best of ideas because it gives some indication of what's actually going on. But you can also integrate it into Visual Studio 2013, in which case you can actually control the width of the marker bar. You can have a really wide one, and the one I've got is on medium. Or you can sort of change it back to ReSharper 8 and earlier, where we didn't have that sort of thing. And if I save that, you'll see that we now have, here's the scroll bar. It's kind of the ordinary scroll bar. And then you have a separate vertical space for the for the marker symbols. I actually prefer it this way, but it's totally up to you. Just showing the fact that in 2013, that's one of the things that we do in fact support. So what else was on our wonderful list of features? TypeScript, yay. How many of you are actually using TypeScript? Not bad at all. So I was kind of curious how big the language uptake is, because, well, it's interesting that we actually don't have a choice. Even if it was like one person in the world, we would probably still be doing it. Although, having said that, once again, there are some languages that we're still working on. So let me show TypeScript. I'm gonna start with, well, the to-do MVC example that you see here. As you can see, the marker bar on the right-hand side already shows some inspections. Like, for example, here it says that this expression statement is not an assignment or call, which is fair enough. So essentially, the kind of things that you would expect in JavaScript and elsewhere, like, for example, I don't know, code completion, these kinds of things, we've got that in place. And I just want to demo some of the typical ReSharper features, shall we say, like, for example, navigation. So let's try and search for input. So once again, I can, just like in any other language that ReSharper supports, I can bring up a navigate to menu. I can navigate to a declaration of something, which takes me to the location where that thing is used. I can also find usages of that symbol, which can sometimes take a long time, because, as you can imagine, in languages where you don't have static typing, what happens is we basically search by name. So I'm looking for something called input, which means that, you know, if I've got jQuery and all sorts of libraries dragged in here, it's basically going to go through a lot of stuff. So here is how the search window looks. I imagine there's only 99 usages. So it finds, what ReSharper does is it kind of separates the usages that it finds locally, and you can see those here in the top left-hand side. Let me see if I can dock this. Maybe not. And then it also goes off and looks for possible dynamic usages. So somewhere where somebody wrote input, like inst.input. We have no idea if it refers to the same input or not, so we just do a kind of a blanket search because we think it might be useful. But the elements that are found locally, they're actually up here. And the reason why it's not responding is probably because there's like a gazillion. That's why I was surprised that there's only 99 usages. However, I do try to keep, yay. Yeah, there we go. See how many it actually found. Probably too many, actually. Okay. Well, it only goes to show one thing, that you have to search for symbols that are less common, shall we say, because something tells me that this could be a few thousand, shall we say. So the most obvious solution to that. All right. So in terms of TypeScript, what else have we got while we're sitting here waiting for the whole relaunch. It would be amusing if this now did some sort of settings reset or something. There are some refactorings, obviously not to the same scale as with C#, but let me dig up a few of those. Well, as you can imagine, we have rename, which would be amusing if it was, you know, a statically typed language, because in TypeScript, obviously, rename would go off and look for structural similarities. Come on. Hey, better late than never. Right, back to our TypeScript files. As soon as all the caches are built and everything. Ta-dam, ta-dam. Come on. Oh, wait. Wait. See, what the one talk that I'm doing later on is on comparing Visual Studio with and without ReSharper. So it's I've switched it off in settings, and that's how these presentations go. It's like a cascade mode. You hit one hiccup, and you get like a gazillion. So bear with me, and we'll get back to the fun of it. But yeah, essentially the refactorings are rename and introduce variable. So and rename is really the tricky one, because with a dynamic language, you know, we'll hit roughly the same problem that we do with search, in the sense that you have a symbol called whatever, and it could be practically anywhere. There's no like static way of finding it. So let's actually go into to-do and try and rename something. Hopefully something that doesn't affect like a gazillion entries. But then again, let's try this. To-do list, rename my to-do list. Well, that was a fairly painless one, because it didn't affect that many entries. Let's find that input thing. Well, this one could be. Let's try my input here. Well, so what ReSharper does, it actually kind of looks for things which could possibly relate to this, because, as I said, dynamic language, there's no way of knowing. And then you can basically pick which ones you want to change as well. So this is the best you'll get from a dynamically typed language, I'm afraid. That's just the rules of the game. So what else is in TypeScript? Oh yeah, rearrange code. This is something that we've got across the board in other programming languages as well. Essentially, you can, if you hold Shift, Control, and Alt, you can basically kind of get ReSharper. Can you see the selection here? You can get ReSharper to select a chunk of code that you can then relocate. So essentially, while I'm holding these keys, what I can do is I can press like up and down, for example, and that would basically kind of move a chunk of the code about. And it doesn't just work for this. Let me format this. It doesn't just work for like a statement. If I've got a function and I do the same thing, I now pick a whole function and I can sort of move it up and down relative to other functions. And it also works for parameters as well. So let's find something that takes more than one parameter. Not an easy thing to do here, incidentally. Yeah, let's try this. So what I can do is I can press left or right to actually. It's not picking up here. Let's maybe try somewhere else. Somewhere with more conventional parameters. Here maybe? Yeah, so I can pick a parameter and I can press right and it would swap places with the parameter next to it. And yet another thing that we've got is a construct called greedy brace, which lets you move the terminating brace while leaving the stuff, leaving some of the entries just before it outside. So if I do it at the closing brace here, let's see if I can. Oops. Let me try and. Nope, seems to be selecting the whole thing for some reason. Let's try here. No. Okay. I guess one of the things to go by. So TypeScript. So we got with TypeScript. Obviously, TypeScript is something that we're constantly working on. This is just something that we've got to by this stage, and obviously there's like a lot of work to do in this regard. So following on, slides. Where we go? JavaScript Ssr. So in ReSharper, we've got this construct called Ssr, stands for Structural Search and Replace. It's basically like searching, but instead of searching with regular expressions, you're searching with this more convenient notation, shall we say. So for example, and I'm going to talk about JavaScript Ssr because we already have Ssr in other languages, and that works just fine. It's essentially in here, if you go into find and search with pattern, what you can do is instead of defining a literal string to search for, you can search for a pattern. So I have some declarations here, just a couple of declarations of an object being defined in various ways. And what I can do is I can type var, and then I can use these placeholders. So the things that start and end with $, are substituted with whatever you find. So obj here would be like person1 or person2 or whatever. And then I can say that I'm looking for something which has curly braces and then has a name followed by a value 100, for example. So I can perform a search like that. Just press find. And what I end up with is I end up 3 elements instead of 1. So as you can see, ReSharper is smart enough to structurally match. That's why it's called structural search and replace. ReSharper structurally matches the pattern that I was looking for, and it finds these 3 locations. And the placeholders that we've used, we just use some placeholders to store, for example, the name of the variable. But they can contain actually several elements in the sense that, for example, let's suppose I want to change the array declarations like this one to just using square braces. The way I would go about doing it is if I go to search with pattern, and I could actually, well, as you can see, we have find, which just locates something, or we have replace. And what I can do is I can go off and I can look for var name equals new array with some arguments. And as I finish typing arguments here, notice that instead of just a label, I have ReSharper saying any number of arguments. So it could be, it's just a comma separated list that could go however long you like. And if I want to replace it with a square brace list, I would just open the square brace. I would say args, like so, and close the square brace. And then I can do a replace. And it finds the 2 locations. In one I have no arguments, in the other I have 4 arguments, and I just simply replace, and now I have A as an empty and B as, square brace 1, 2, 3, 4. And actual fact, this kind of structural matching, it's very smart in the sense that, for example, here is a more complicated example. So I have an if statement, and in the first condition I increase x if it is greater than 100. And in the second condition, I'm doing exactly the same thing, but we flip the condition. So if 100 is greater than equal to x, then we decrease x, otherwise we increase it. Now, these 2 blocks might seem completely different to you. It might seem like, they're doing different things. They're actually doing the same thing, and ReSharper is smart enough to, if you go and actually search for this kind of stuff, ReSharper is smart enough to actually pick up on it, in the sense that, for example, what I can do is I can do a search. So I can say if some value is greater than 100, then we have expression 1, for example, and else we have expression 2, xpr2$. And like so. And well, let's just do a search for those. And you'll notice that instead of finding just the first case, this case, it also finds the other case, even though it's formulated entirely differently. So what this shows is that it's not just a blind like pattern matching algorithm. ReSharper does know that if you check x is greater than 100, then the inverse of that check is x is less than equal to 100. And even if you swap around the definitions on the left and right hand side, ReSharper doesn't really care much about that in terms of, you know, how it's finding things. And the same works for simpler constructs as well. So for example, down below I have plus plus a minus minus, and then I have a plus plus minus minus a. So I swap their position, and I also swap the position of the increment and decrement operators. However, because we're not recording the side effects, so we're not recording the values of a plus plus and so on, once again, if I go and I search with pattern and I look for something that looks like a plus plus comma minus minus a, and I go off and search for that, then I once again, not only do I get the first line, but I also get the second line, because ReSharper knows that these things are equivalent provided that the results are not assigned to any variable. And one thing to point out, just in case you're wondering, is that ReSharper generally ignores all the extra noise, so semicolons or curly braces, that kind of stuff is ignored. So for example, I have some code here with a ternary expression and an if expression, but I could search for it in a completely different way. So for example, to find this chunk of code, I could say, for example, that I'm looking for x equals x greater than 10 in round braces, 0x, and then I could have, for example, if with some condition, and inside that if I could have curly braces. You can see we have no curly braces here, and I could say, you know, x equals minus 1 and whatever. When I go and find it, ReSharper does actually find the string, because it doesn't care about all the syntactic noise that ReSharper, that JavaScript throws in the mix. So that's I guess an illustration of how smart it is. And just in case you think that it's a bit complicated to create these kinds of search patterns, you can also create them right from code. I think you can just right-click, and somewhere we should have an option to. Well, maybe it's here. Search for pattern. No. I was pretty sure that yeah. I guess find similar code is the option you have. So essentially, it automatically turns it into a construct ready for searching, and it will infer as many variables as it can, though obviously not every single one. So that's SSR. That's something that you can use in, you know, C# and VB and whatever language, and now it's in JavaScript as well. So next up we have XAML, and I once again want to ask the same question. How many of you are using XAML for? All right, yay, cool. Actually, in ReSharper 8 and 8.1, there has been so much stuff that I could literally, like for ReSharper 8, I could do a whole presentation on how much XAML stuff has been added. But since we're at 8.1, I'm just going to briefly show some of the fresher, shall we say, things related to that. So let me dig up. I think it's part 4. All right. Oh, I just remembered I actually have a slide on XAML, and oh, there's a yeah, some of the more obvious things on TypeScript, like typing assistance and support for live templates. But then again, most of these would be expected as a byproduct of us supporting a particular language. I'm pretty sure that our live templates actually work in C++ as well, though I haven't tried, to be honest. And yeah, XAML. So this was supposed to be like a flowing demonstration. Let's have it this way. So double completion. I don't know if you heard about double completion. It's something that we brought in ReSharper 8. Basically, if you're looking for a member and you cannot find it with code completion, you press the shortcut again and it digs it out for you. I'll show it in a second. Actually, maybe I should be showing these in a kind of sequential fashion. So let's have double completion here. So best way to show it is, well, let's have just a I have a grid here and I want to have some rows for it, so I'm thinking that typing RD to get some row definitions is the right way to go. Unfortunately, you can see here that it says no suggestions, which is a bit sad, but this idea of double completion is, if you're not getting any completion, just press the shortcut once again. And now, even though it's not a, the reason why it hasn't been suggested to us is because you cannot just have a row definitions element. It has to be grid.row definitions. So with double completion, you basically now have this option, and I can sort of complete it, and that's how useful it is. Essentially, it's kind of, it's something that we've already got in C# from the previous versions. Like, for example, if you have a private variable that you're accessing, you don't get it in completion the first time round, but once you complete it, then it kind of it becomes available, and in certain cases it's very useful. So another thing is support for theme resource and other things from Windows 8.1 XAML. To be honest, I'm not the not like the guru of Windows 8 development. In actual fact, I don't share that much enthusiasm. I may write some boring .pf apps. Import types on paste is something that we've had in ordinary C#. So you, for example, you take a chunk of, let's go to some other file. So you take a chunk of code from a XAML file and you paste it into a different XAML file. What do you expect to happen? Well, previously you would have to, you know, alt enter all the types, but now it's just a single press. Import types for pasted code. You press that and that's done. And this is something that we obviously have in C# and VB and other languages as well. What else is of particular note? Better get back here. So there's an improved file structure window. I think it was actually rewritten to better indicate the constructs. Actually, if you haven't heard of file structure window, because many people haven't, let me show you what exactly that is. So essentially, one of the ways to browse the structure of the file is what ReSharper gives you in the file structure window. So it's a tool window that basically tries to mimic the structure of the file you're looking at. It's obviously adapted to the kinds of files that you might be working with. So, for example, if you're working with XAML, it would have like a hierarchy with a grid and row definitions inside the grid and so on. And you can actually synchronize both of these, so you can sort of make sure that as you navigate in code, the file structure window changes its selection to where you are. And likewise, you can actually click something inside the file structure window and it takes you to the location in code where that thing is defined. So now we have it in XAML with certain improvements. Then there is some typing assistance that I actually wanted to demonstrate. Well, a lot of typing in XAML is well, subject to bad responsiveness, shall we say, and that's not really our fault so much as the fault of Visual Studio itself, and we're trying to help you out any way we can. So previously, like in ReSharper 8, the kind of stuff that we've introduced is just, you know, typing helpers. If, for example, you know, you have a let's try having row definitions here, and what if I press enter? Well, as I press enter, the attribute turns into a nested element, and we previously had it as a contacts action, which wasn't as convenient. And then if we let me add some text block here. By the way, since ReSharper 8, actually creation of entities is a bit simpler because you don't have to do the angle braces and all the rest of it. I just type TB and I can press tab, and that gets me the text blocks straight away. And once again, things like I press enter here to complete an attribute, and then as I wipe out the quotes, the quotes are completed for me, and obviously we get all the I was going to say all the typical assistance, though maybe not here. Let's try let's try doing a curly brace. So you type the curly brace, and ReSharper is actually, it knows about curly braces. It knows about some of the things that you might actually want to be using. Let me try and actually give let's try a complicated example. Let's have a resource here, and I don't know, a solid color brush. Shouldn't be typing the opening angle brace, actually something like SCB with a key of some type, ABC, let's call it, and the color of, I don't know, 0. So if I were to now use it in a text block, let's say background, then presumably I could type ABC and receive absolutely nothing in completion. And once again, if I use the double completion mechanic, then suddenly I get the completion for ABC. If I press enter here, what happens is ReSharper automatically puts in this block for me, and it's asking me, do I want it as a static or dynamic resource. So once again, an extra level of convenience for you to import, in this case, import resources in the situation where you might not have been accessing them originally. So, and yeah, apart from that, the last thing I wanted to mention is support for all sorts of obscure things like XAML 2009, XAML files in Unified Communications SDK, and even some magic related to usage analysis for WPF 4.5 binding to static properties. We basically have a separate person here who actually is really proficient in all this stuff, so it's there's lots of framework-specific stuff in here. But then again, there's lots of framework-specific stuff in the whole of ReSharper, and I guess in the second talk I will demonstrate why that's good, basically, because sometimes, Visual Studio's approach is essentially that to treat all code the same, provided that Microsoft's different technologies are supported at some level. It doesn't really obsess over the fact that a particular interface is special, for example, and that interface requires special treatment, and then you can sort of support frameworks that use this interface and so on. Now, we'll look at that in a while. So, some of the other things that are also included in 8.1 is some improvements in find results and inspection results, basically allowing people to pin them and so on. We've updated the command line tools. By the way, in case you haven't heard about the command line tools, in addition to shipping ReSharper as a product that builds into Visual Studio, we also have actually two at the moment, two command line tools which are useful for continuous integration systems or just running something from the command line. So one of those is called inspect code, and it's basically just like running ReSharper on a solution and getting a list of inspections, but without Visual Studio and all the rest of it. So it's just a command line thing. You run it on your solution and it gives you an XML, which means that if you're using a continuous integration system that is not TeamCity, because in TeamCity we've got it built in, then you can just run this on the command line. But obviously, if you want to render the XML file, then you would have to write your own rendering logic. But at least, we make this kind of export, so Visual Studio on the build server is not required. And the other tool is called DUP Finder. It's actually something that we use ourselves. It's a search for duplicates, and by that we don't mean just literal search for identical code blocks. We do it in a semantic way, because after all, ReSharper is kind of very intelligent in terms of the being able to understand code and similarities in code. So that's once again a command line tool. It's also packaged up with ReSharper, and you can also run that as a separate build task maybe, and basically pick up those cases where somebody's duplicating code. Maybe they change the names of the variables, but it's still kind of identical structurally. So in a way, it's somewhat similar to structural search and replace in terms of the way that it interprets things. And then, of course, there is the ReSharper SDK. We've actually, if any of you feel like developing plugins for ReSharper, we've changed the way that it's distributed now. So strictly speaking, the ReSharper SDK right now contains only the examples for how you would develop plugins, because if you want the binaries to bind to for the SDK as well, then you can just use Nugget. We're slowly gravitating to this whole this whole ideology of Nugget. And in fact, this is something that's, I think it's appeared in 8.0, maybe earlier, but the idea is that if ReSharper's own extensions, if you go into Extension Manager, they're now contained in a dialog that might seem a little bit familiar to some of you, because it's the same as the add nugget references to a project. The only difference being is that these are all plugins that you can download for ReSharper. You could just grab one of them and kind of install straight away. You don't even have to restart Visual Studio to start using one of those. And incidentally, I just realized that .cover, which I'm going to talk about, I guess, in our third session, is also using an extension manager. But there is only one extension here, which is, a hint that maybe you can help us develop this ecosystem, because I mean you can imagine lots of extensions for a code analysis tool, people needing their own analysis for something, but for code coverage it's a bit more obscure, shall we say. So that's why there is only one, but this is new. So for ReSharper, it's been around for a while, and it's generally just a simple way for you to get all the plugins that you might need for your development. And yeah, as I mentioned, the SDK that we've updated, it's now entirely different. And as always, there's plenty of fixes and performance improvement and little things that I probably wouldn't mention simply because I didn't know about them. Plenty of obscure inspections, as well as this whole attempting to keep up with Microsoft on the many fronts that they're proceeding with. Actually, there is one. If we were talking about extensions, there's one extension that I particularly like, partly because I wrote it, but I think it also it's a better illustration of why fast coding matters than anything I could come up with. So let me give you a demo of it. It's called Mnemonics, and it's actually, if we go into Extension Manager, I should already have it installed actually. Mnemonic Live Templates. It's free. You can grab it, and what it does is it lets you create entities at lightning speed, which is a good thing. And it's actually it's supported in lots and lots of languages, so it's not just C#. But I'm going to go with C# just because. So let me make a class. Actually, I shouldn't even be doing that. Let me wipe it out and try it again. So the idea of mnemonics, and the reason why I kind of like to promote it, is that fundamental constructs, .NET constructs like classes and properties and methods, they're turned into these tiny shorthands. So for example, like to make a class, you just type C and press tab, and you get a class that you can call person. And then let's suppose I want like a person with a name and an age. In the typical Visual Studio setting, you would be typing public string name get set, like so. In actual fact, I just type PS, press tab, name, age, and so on and so forth. If I want something that's a field, I could type VI ID, for example. One curious thing about mnemonics is it's not just oh yeah, I forgot the methods and the whole thing. So like a void returning method, for example, you just type M, press tab. But if it's like a method that returns an IEnumerable of string, for example, you can write M tilde S, press tab, and once again, you might think, okay, you just saved me like a fraction of a second, but I use it all the time. It's something that's fairly quick, and it's also good for. It's also interesting that this is. I didn't just implement this for C#. Obviously, it's also implemented for all sorts of other creepy languages like Kotlin and F# and others. So it's all part and parcel of this bundle, and it's something that I recommend you take a look at, because I mean, even though it's not strictly related to our 8.1 discussion, it's still very it's something that can save you a lot of time. So with that in mind, I think that we should pause right now and then get back to our get back to the second talk a bit later. So thanks for your attention.